Alright, so I'm going to turn this beer keg into a charcoal retort. What I've done is I've put this bit of blue painter's tape along the edge there, along that line basically. And I think that's pretty clean, pretty even. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to use a bit of black spray paint and spray paint over this, and then once it's dried I'll peel it off, so that way I'll have a really even line to cut along with the grinder. Alright, so that paint has dried, and now I'm going to take the tape off. Alright, so that has left a pretty perfect line all the way around. Now I'm going to trace it out basically along here, along the top part with my little angle grinder. Right, so I've traced a line along there with my angle grinder. That was an extremely tedious job, but I think it's turned out alright. And now I'm going to use the bigger angle grinder to just cut the whole thing all the way through. Alright, so I've cut this keg open. Oof. It's not as clean as I was hoping. It's not really perfect, but I think it's alright. Also what I have done is just put this mark here with the grinder before I finished, so that way I can get it in perfect alignment basically with how I cut it. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to roll a circle which will basically line up with the mark there, and that'll come up to about there probably, so that way it can be clamped together. And also as a tip when you're doing this, don't drink whatever booze is left in there because it's full of metal filings. Alrighty, so what I've done to get the size that I need to roll the circle is I put this bit of tape around the beer keg, and then I unrolled it and put it out on this bit of strapping here, and I made it just about a millimetre longer because I figured a millimetre longer would be better than a millimetre shorter. So that said, I'm going to roll this into a circle. Alright, so I've done this ring. I've welded that on around there. That's pretty good. It's got a good seal. And what I've done now is I've put on these things here, welded them on both sides, and a bolt goes through them, and they'll bolt together slightly to hold it together. It's got the same on the other side. And I held them together with a bolt while I welded them, so that way they'd be in alignment. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the plasma cutter, and I'm going to cut out this piece here. Alrighty, so I'm going to give you an update on everything I've done. What I did was I used the plasma cutter, like I said, and took the valve, I suppose you could call it, out of the top, and then I cut it off, and then I flipped it upside down basically, like that. So that part there, which was sticking out the top, is now sticking out the bottom, which gives me room basically to put that pipe in, and then I welded it back in. And then I have this piece which I cut at 280mm, and then that goes along there like that. And then there'll be another piece which goes along the side basically like that, which will be welded on there like that. I'm probably not explaining it very clearly, but what I've also done is I've ground a bevel like that so I can get a better weld. So I'm going to go ahead and weld this along here like that, and then I'll do my other piece going along the side there, and I'll show you how that's all going to work. Alright, so I'm basically finished with this charcoal retort. As you can see, I have this pipe on here with the cap welded on the end, and I've got a row of holes on each side. You probably can't see that very well. And that basically allows all the smoke to come out those holes, so it'll be bolted together, which will provide a pretty good seal, and it'll be sitting on its side like that, on a couple of boulders, and there'll be a fire underneath, which will heat the barrel, which will be filled with hardwood of some kind, probably eucalyptus, but that will basically release all the gases without burning the wood. So it'll release all the gases out of the holes, and as those gases develop basically, and we'll get more into the process, it will become flammable, and then I'll light it, and all those gases will burn out the holes, like a barbecue or something like that, which will heat the barrel, which will release more gases, which will heat the barrel, which will release more gases, until there's no more gas left, and we've got complete charcoal, more or less. Alright, so I've decided not to put it on boulders. So what I've done is I've built this stand for it to go on. That's what it looks like from underneath. What I've done is I've welded those bits of box section to the main part of the keg, not the lid, but to the main part. I've welded them on, and I just welded on these frames like so onto the box section, and then you can't really see it that well, but I also welded them onto these ridges here. You can see it better on that side. I think it's pretty sturdy how it is. When I want to open it up, I'll take out this bit of rebar there. Then I'll be able to unbolt it on both sides, and then the lid will just pull straight off. I made sure that I didn't weld the pipe or the lid to anything, so it can all just slide right out. So it'll just be seated on the ground like this, and I'll light the fire underneath, and I think that'll provide pretty good airflow the way I've set it up. And then once it's going, the wood gas will just take over and fuel it. And as a side note, I've gotten this thing here welded in place. What it is it's the top off one of the gas bottles, and I cut it down with a plasma cutter, and I cut a hole in the centre of the bottom of the keg here. And then this is part of the gate valve from a barbecue bottle, and the reason I put this in here is because of this thing here, which is a pressure release. So that way, if there's pressure building up, then it will just pop the pressure release instead of exploding. It's probably not necessary, it's probably a bit overkill, but it's hydrogen gas, so I don't want to stuff around with it. Alrighty, let's load this retort up with some firewood. Alright, so that's loaded up. I've made sure it's hardwood, hard dried eucalypt. And it's got to be completely dry. Alright guys, so I'm giving you a bit of an update. Basically, we couldn't really get a massive amount of smoke coming out of the barrel. Not as much as we should have been. And there's timber here. I've taken it all out. It was too big, I think. So the small stuff I've left and the bigger stuff I've chopped up. Because the thing is, it's not getting hot enough inside to actually combust it and turn it into charcoal. So I figured if I split it a bit smaller, then it'll basically heat it more evenly for the heat that we do have. As you can see, it has been turning into charcoal fairly successfully. So I think it would have just been a matter of just leaving it for a bit longer to slowly heat and turn into charcoal. So I'm thinking what I'm going to have to do is I'll probably have to try and make some sort of a heat shield that goes over the whole thing, so it retains its heat really well. I'll have to cut up an old barrel or something, I think. I'll figure something out, but I think it's not adequate what I've got here. It'll need to retain the heat really well, other than what it is doing. Additionally, my other option would just be to just leave it and to just keep feeding the fire, but I don't think that's practical because it will take forever before it can actually produce syngas, and when it does produce syngas, it might not be enough to sustain it properly. So I think I'm just going to have to modify the system so that it retains its heat properly. So you can see a bit of water in the bottom. I think that's just as the wood has sort of started to bake, it's released steam. And as the fire's gone out, because we just decided to let it go out, as the fire's gone out, it's more or less just condensated back down, whatever it is that hasn't escaped. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just clean it all out a bit, and I'll also add some adhesive fire rope around there, so that way it seals a bit. Alright, so here's an update on the retort. what I've done is I've taken those covers off and I've put it in this thing here, and I've sealed it up on all sides with gravel, like so. And that's a pretty good seal, like that. It'll keep most of the heat in. And what I've also done is I've taken the bolts out, because those bolts were bending and not really working. So now I've just put those springs there from a trampoline. And what I'll also do is I'll stuff a bit of fire rope in that gap there, and I'll stuff it in with a screwdriver. So what I'm going to do is I'll have this piece here sitting at the front, somewhat like that, and I will have a pipe which will go under the front there, hooked up to the fan, so that can basically just power it and keep it going, so it will get really hot, and the heat will just be able to travel all around the whole keg and heat it up. And since it's also contained in all this metal, it'll just get really hot and start producing syngas a whole lot sooner. Alright, so I've got a fire here which I'm about to light, and I've stuffed this gap here with fire rope in as many spots as I can. I can't get it all the way around, but I think it'll make a good difference. Alright, so hopefully you can hear me alright. I've got a nice little fire going here with this leaf blower here. I've done that so that way it reduces the air coming into it, so it actually blows a whole lot less forcefully. So once this fire is going a bit more, I'll put the piece of metal across it and just leave the leaf blower there to basically get it up to temperature. Alright, so I've stoked that fire up and I've closed it all up with the air going in, so that's starting to get right up to temperature now, and we're about 5 or so minutes in. Alright, so probably not even 10 minutes in, and already on top of the eye, and you can see it beating up and hissing. So that's how hot it is. So that keg will be getting really hot inside there. So we should be seeing some flammable syngas hopefully within an hour, especially as the flames will be enveloping the whole thing and heating it right up. Alright, so this is an absolute inferno in there right now. I've just loaded it up with some more wood. It is extremely hot, so I'm going to cover it back up, and then in another maybe 15 minutes or so, 10 minutes, I'll load it up with some more wood to keep it going. You don't want to let it die down. So probably about 20 minutes in now, maybe half an hour, and it's really hot on top now. Absolutely scalding, so I should be getting syngas hopefully fairly soon. Alright, so I'm just stoking it up with wood once again. I've turned the leaf blower off so you can hear me a bit better. It's pretty hot, so I don't want to get too close, but we can't, I don't see any smoke coming out of that pipe yet. So I'm just going to turn the leaf blower back on and put that panel up to keep the heat in, and hopefully we see syngas. Alrighty, so here's an update. I can't really tell, and it's stupidly hot where I am, and I'm a good 1.5 meters away. But to me that looks like syngas, because you can see the fire there down at the bottom, and then you can see that fire coming, well, it looks like it's coming out of the pipe. It's a bit too early to tell, but that certainly looks to me like it's coming out of the burner which I made. You can't see it as clearly from this side, and it is zoomed in a fair bit, but it does sort of look like it's coming out of the pipe at the bottom, but it's hard to tell because of all the flames down at the bottom as well. I reckon what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave it for now, because it certainly does look like it's coming out of that burner, or it does to me anyway. So what I'm going to do, I've got some more wood chopped up over there, which is a fair bit. I'm going to let this fire die down, and I'm going to take the leaf blower away, and I'm just going to keep an eye on it, and I'll give you an update when I can see things a bit more clearly. And if it turns out that it isn't syngas, then I'll just load the fire up again. And this is my co-inventor, Charlie, but he's not being very useful at the minute. He's just bringing me a bit of bark because he thinks it's been useful. So I've sort of come to the conclusion that it isn't syngas, so I'm just going to, I've loaded it back up, and I'm just going to put the leaf blower back on it and let it keep baking. Alrighty guys, so you might not be able to hear me very well, but you can see that there's proper syngas coming out here. Don't know if you can see that, but those springs have bent under all the heat, which is a bit of a bugger. So that means it's going to be leaking a bit of gas around the lid. But then again, with the fire right there, it should be a bit better. So that burner is working really well. So it's basically heating itself now. So I can just let this fire go out. There's a lot of heat left. But this syngas should just take over now. The burner's not working as well on that side. I don't know whether that's just the wind or something. But either way, it's going pretty well, and it should just basically just stay like that until the flame goes out. Alrighty, so that syngas is still burning. So I've just stood that heat shield up to just keep the heating and to keep the wind. Alright, so here's a bit of an update. We had pretty good syngas coming out the top of the burner here. It was going for probably a good hour at least, but it's just sort of burnt off now. I think that might be because it's burnt all the gas out of the wood, but that doesn't really make sense. It doesn't really make sense because I've seen videos where they've got the gas burning for hours and hours and hours. So I was probably burning for a bit over an hour, maybe at most. The other possibility is, since it got so stupidly hot in here, and you can see the metal's actually melted off the iron there a bit, maybe it just burnt up a whole lot quicker. I don't really know. You're supposed to let these things sit for about a day before you crack them open, to stop them from start burning again. But I'm going to crack it open now, actually, and just take a quick look. Alright, let's take a look. So that charcoal, there's a lot of heat coming off it. I can feel it even with my gloves on. But that charcoal appears to be pretty well fully carbonised. It's breaking up quite easily. Oh, that is perfect. Oh my goodness, that is absolutely perfect. It's breaking up just like it's supposed to. Let's have a look on some of the... Yeah, that's perfect. That's fully carbonised. Alright, so I think the conclusion here is, even though it didn't burn its own syngas for very long, I think just since it got so absolutely stupidly hot, I think it just must have burnt it up a whole lot more quickly. But that is proper completed charcoal there. It's fully carbonised. It's more or less just carbon. It just breaks apart so easily. So that is extremely successful. I'm really glad about how well that turned out. But the one thing I'm sort of thinking right now is that I built such a raging furnace in there. Having this pipe out the bottom isn't actually as much of a advantage as I thought it would be, because it's not really burned for very long. But then again, I suppose you just got to build it up so it's broiling and then just let it finish burning like that and let the fire die out. But anyway, that's really good charcoal, and it's worked properly like I hoped it has. So I hope you've enjoyed learning about how to build this retort. And it was pretty easy to make all in all, fairly straightforward. And I hope I've explained everything pretty well. And if you have any questions, just let me know in the comments, and I'd be happy to answer them. And until next time, cheers. Oh yeah, and on a side note, I've been thinking about this system here with the spring. The reason it wasn't working beforehand with the bolts connecting them up is because the bolts were quite small. So I was basically, it had stripped the thread when I tried to tighten it too tight. So I'm going to redo those tabs there and just make them smaller. I mean, a whole lot larger, I meant to say, and I'll put a couple of big purlin bolts in them, so that way it'll clamp together properly, and there won't be any of that business happening, and there won't be any bending or anything like that, and that'll be way better. So on yet another side note, as a bit of advice, because this process took about 4 hours maybe, not very long, when you consider what it is. Don't heat it up massively hot like I did. What I did was I spread the fire across the whole bottom of it, as you can see, but don't spread it out across, don't heap it up too much. Spread it out, but don't heap it up, because I was heaping it up with those branches there every quarter of an hour or so, and I just kept adding them, and it was just getting really, really hot. and it'll just put too much stress on the system, however you decide to build it. So that'd be my advice. Spread it out, but heap it up maybe every half an hour or so would be my advice. And don't have whatever leaf blower or fan you have blowing air in, don't blow it in too forcefully, because that'll just burn it up even more quickly. Because as it is, you've got to be gathering branches and cutting them up while it's burning down. So just don't do it too forcefully and too hot, because otherwise it'll put too much stress on the system. So that's everything I've got to say now. So now all you've got to do is go build one for yourself.